Hi, everyone. So let's start session 3 now and see what we do to select the, uh, the right franchise for you. When you decide to have a franchise, you need to go to a franchise consultant so we can somehow, as to repeat, which we talked about earlier, how to get through the maze of 3,000 franchises. So what we're going to go through today is some of the questions that have to be asked to make sure that happens, okay? First thing, we're going to ask personal data, right? We have to ask if you're married or single, the amount of children and ages, because that is going to affect your life, just like financial planning is the same as franchise planning in that aspect. How many children you have, what's your income needs, what's your time needs, and so forth. So you have more income you need if you have more children, and you also, it takes a lot of your time, so you got to balance that with business and income. What's your hobbies and activities and interest? Because if we can find a franchise that actually meets your income needs as well as your interest needs, that's a home run. That's so hard to do, and that'd be great. That's what we're trying to do. We want you to be excited about it every day. We don't want you to ever think it's a job. It's a business, and it's part of your life. Um, then we go into the business data. What is your current position? Are you in a company? Are you salaried? What's your duties? So, that's, and the same for your spouse. We're going to ask the same things. Is one person going to work in the business, or both people going to work in the business? And if you're salaried right now, is it going to be an executive run franchise, or an absentee type ownership, or semi absentee where you're working with the managers because you want to keep your position? Or are you tired of the bureaucracy and you want to go work for yourself and you are going to leave? But we need to know your salary requirements, because that's probably the same as your lifestyle requirements. And then like any other franchise consultant, is going to ask a series of questions. So a lot of questions get asked so we can get down to what kind of franchise fits your lifestyle, income style, and management history style, how many employees you like, and so forth. So, have you ever owned a business before? And the details of that. What kind of business it was, how many employees, what hours did you work? We're always trying to get the details so we can develop. That's what I want to do, is develop a business model from all this information, so then we can, from first we build a business model from you and I speaking for many hours, and then from that business model we will develop a synergy with 2 to 3 franchisors, just so you then have almost a perfect match. So again, now how long, another, I'm going to just go through these series of questions that we'll ask. How long have you been looking for a business? Very important. Are you frustrated? Do you know what area you want to look in? Do you definitely need our help then to see why you weren't getting the businesses you were looking for? Or were you going for the fad of the week? You got to watch it with businesses and franchises. If somebody's willing, as a friend of yours, and says, I want to sell your business, maybe the business isn't working. Maybe it's not that financially viable, because sometimes people don't want to sell business that make a lot of money, but they're selling bad ones. So, and if it's a franchise, why are you picking one? Because is it a fad? Is there other ones that might meet your requirements? Or does the fad work? But let's be weary that we're picking the right one. What other businesses have you investigated? It's important to see how many you're looking at, and hopefully it's not just one. I need to know everything about the client, so when we go do our due diligence on the franchisor is doing the due diligence on us. Remember, just from repeat, the franchisor is the company you're buying from. That's the McDonald's, Wendy's, and Burger Kings of the world, Subways, names you know, and the people who buy the location or the retail location of the franchisees. So we need to know, are there any bankruptcies in your past? How about your spouse? Very important to know, because the franchisor wants to know that you can afford their franchise, or if it's on a time payment, you'll be able to pay. You'll be able to be a good franchisor. They don't want people flipping around every year. They want you to stay 5, 10, 20 years, because that's how they're going to build their product and their brand. Have you ever been convicted of a crime in the past? You know, these are some personal questions, but we better know them now, because people are going to find them. When you're picking the franchisor, they're picking you. It's a two-way street. Are there any lawsuits pending? Very important, because you can have a good net worth now and a lawsuit can wipe you out. So these are the things that a franchise consultant like myself will be talking with a candidate to kind of narrow down if they're a franchisee candidate themselves. Business ownership preferences. Are you seeking an individual franchisee kind of location in one franchise or multiple units? I'll use the analogy that in my past history, I've been in business 26 years, 15 of them have been franchising. And when I had Cold Stone Creameries, that was the franchise that I had. I had 8 of them for 15 years. So obviously I was a multiple franchise owner. And that's what I'm talking about, single units. And a lot of people live off one unit. But some want many. And you say, well, but it doesn't ever become 8 times the income. It would be nice in an ideal world. But you have to think about, do you want to manage that many employees? Every one of your locations have a manager. Then when you start getting to 3 or 4, like I did on the way to 8, you have a regional manager over 4. Then I had 2 regional managers over 8. And then I actually got one man that worked all the time. I paid him a bigger salary, and he ran all 8. Maybe that wasn't the greatest for a touch feel kind of thing, but I had somebody who was responsive all the time in a hurry, and I didn't have to, like, you know, decide what regional manager I had to use for a certain task. So when would you like your first franchise to open? It's very important. Some people are saying, like I have a candidate right now that really wants a franchise in 3 years because they're moving from the United States to Canada. Well, they really don't want it now. They want it in 3 years. So, or if you want it in 6 months, let's start now. 6 months is a quick way to turn around a franchise. It's not easy. If you're going on a retail kind of location, it takes time to get the architectural drawings, then bring it downtown, whatever city you're in, and go through plan control and get the plans approved. And then you move on to make sure you pick the site, and hopefully the franchisor will help you with that. And from that site, you got to get the landlord to approve it. And you got to go, the landlord is the site. You got to approve the landlord, and they got to approve you. Because the landlord's looking at your net worth too, and they're looking at your bankruptcy history, your crime history, your payment history, your credit score. The landlord, even though they're getting a lot every month, and you'd say, well, every month would be golden for them, they don't want to get somebody in there that's going to build out, and then they have to take them to court to get their payment. So they want to know that you're viable too. But you should have there's no other way. You have to have a real estate agent working for you, a commercial one that does retail, and he's your team member fighting with the landlord, because landlords are difficult. They're very experienced at this, and you're always going to be new at retail compared to their knowledge. You have to discuss with them exclusivity, which they don't like. In my case, it was ice cream and yogurt. I want the exclusivity in ice cream and yogurt. In other words, I didn't want anybody in my strip mall that's any competition with any kind of, really, I didn't want any sweets. I would you start at ice cream, yogurt, candies, candy apples, caramel apples, cakes. You put it all in there, and then they're going to come back and say, baloney, I'm only going to give you ice cream. You can't have any other stuff. Well, you still want a victory. You got ice cream. You can't have Baskin-Robbins next to you. You're not going to have Dairy Queen next to you, so you want a big argument. But it's still not strong enough. I want ice cream and yogurt, which is very difficult now to get because there's so many yogurt franchises, so it's very difficult to get both ice cream and yogurt. But if you get that, you definitely have a home run because of the fact you blocked out most of the competition that's going to share that cold treat dollar. So I would always go in with a laundry list that's sweet oriented, including you throw coffee in it, but you'll never win coffee because there's always a Starbucks close by. Starbucks has the power in almost every shopping center because they're huge, they got money, they're not individually owned, so they know they'll always get their money. Starbucks will win everything, okay? So, would you want to, are you going to be involved part-time or full-time? Another big question to ask. When I'm involving you in a franchise, I want to know, let's get the right one. If you're going to be only part-time and you're going to have a very labor-intense retail, that might not be the thing for you. But if you're going to be part-time and a manager running it, you need a semi-absentee ownership or even a full absentee ownership or an executive model where you're talking to a manager every day that you trained or was trained by the franchise system. So it's important for me to know if you're going to be full-time or part-time. What would your dream business be? Now we're going into categories of that business or that franchise, and we're trying to make the consulting model and get the franchise that matches you. Would you like a franchise that consults? We have consulting franchises. Sales. Does it have a lot of outbound sales as opposed to customers come to you like in retail? And sometimes people come out of a company where they were a salesperson and they really like to sell. It's not a grudgery for them. It's the thrill of everyday selling. So they want to sell kind of franchise where it's got a lot of outbound sales. You got to build your customer base. You buy a territory. You get the system of how to market, what your product is. You learn your product, and then you got to do a lot of selling. Go to network groups and so forth. And then manage employees. How many employees do you like? When I had 8 Cold Stones with the regional managers and the store managers and employees at the 4th of July, which is the peak of the ice cream or cold treat season, I had 150 employees. I don't know if I want to do that again. That's hard to manage 150 employees. I'm going to ask you, and then there's other franchise we have, it takes 1 employee, which could be you or 1 employee that you just manage. And it doesn't mean that the 150 makes any less money than the 1 employee if you buy the right franchise. That's what I'm here for. We go through what your lifestyle is, what your income styles are, what you want, and what's going to meet those needs of investment needs too, or what kind of return you want if we can match that. Are you good working with computers? Because we got IT franchises, or we just have a lot of franchises that are pretty intensive with computers and some of them aren't. So that's why we were asking those questions. How are you with customers, customer service, working with the customer, solving complaints, enjoying that? Not that a complaint's enjoyable, but some people like to reach out to other, customers, talk with them, and solve it. I found out a long time ago in any business, even if it's general business, never mind franchise, that the customer complaint is not as bad as you really think if you pick up the phone and call them and start talking to them. And this goes back to my college days when I worked for Volkswagen of America out in New Jersey. I thought, when you're in college, you get these jobs, and you always like to talk about a cushy job. You go back to your friends and your classmates, and you say, wow, I can sit there at night in a plush office because everything impresses you when you're young and in your college. I can sit in a plush office, put my feet on the desk, and make these phone calls everywhere around the country. And I can call anywhere because in those days, and I'm time dating myself, in the 70s when I'm working, long distance was expensive. You can go from New York to California, maybe 50 cents a minute. It adds up fast, right? Maybe an international was $3 a minute, right? Now it's like insignificant, the cost of long distance, even sometimes international with the right plan. So you're even impressed as a college student that you got a phone. I'm working with Volkswagen of America. I can call anywhere around the country. First, you'd read the letter. My job was to read the letter, then call the customer, kind of relax them, and bring it down a little, get them relaxed that Volkswagen's going to take care of them. I don't know in the end if they really did, but my job was to relax them. It's just amazing. Read the letters and they're horror stories. This happens, that happens. Not once, but 5 times they go back. The car still breaks. It's really a lemon. And you're afraid to dial that number because they're going to really kill you on the phone because their letter is like 3 pages screaming. So, so I call them. They say, wow, it's like 10 o'clock at night. Volkswagen of America's calling. You really care? And that's what so some people like handling customer complaints and so forth because you wind down the customer. Just you calling makes them feel better. Even when I was in Cold Stone with just ice cream and they wrote these letters how they were mistreated by my employees, I hated to call. It's stressful. But every time you call, usually you got an employee for a customer for a long time. They enjoyed so much that you took the time. If you ignore them and don't call them, you're lost. They're going to tell 20 people. You're going to lose 20 customers. So you have to call. Customer service, everything. So I'm going to ask you before you get a franchise, do you like customer service? Do you like manufacturing products? Do you want to be in kind of a manufacturing industry, which is kind of labor intensive and equipment intensive and probably kind of a little more expensive, capital intensive? And most important to end this session, what hours of the day or week do you prefer to work? Very important if we're going to pick a franchise. Um, how many hours you want to work a week? What are you used to working? And people come in 7 days, 100 hours a week. We try to talk them down a little from that. And other people say, I only want to work 30. I got a family to raise, and I don't need that much income, or the income that we're talking about in this franchise works for me. So let's finish session 3 right here. We'll be coming back with session 4, and I think we covered a lot of the questions we ask in the beginning, what we call the confidential questionnaire when we're dealing with a candidate to pick a franchise and help them out. And also, these questions bleed over into the consultancy. I kind of do them with the candidate at different times, but the questions are in both of them. So we want to keep asking questions through this process to pick the right franchise. So I want to thank you right now. This is the end of session 3, and I will be back with you on session 4 while we are trying to pick the correct franchise. That's what this is about. Thank you for being here for session 3. See you in session 4. Thank you.